Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. You've been able to work with a lot of great coaches at some great colleges. What are three things, if you had to choose, three things or characteristics that great coaches have?
You know, I think right off the gate, man, and it was I got a great piece of advice when I got the Paris Junior College head coaching job when I was 25. So I was very young, opportunity of a lifetime, didn't even realize it then how lucky I was. Now I do, But the guy that I played for and worked for as a GA at Commerce, Sam Walker, who was the winningest coach in Texas A&M Commerce history, his longtime mentor and the guy that he worked for forever, he was a guy named Paul Peak. He was the head coach at Texas A&M Commerce, used to be East Texas State and Georgetown for a long time, the NAIA school down there in Central Texas. And I asked him, because he had been a very, very young head coach at a time too. And he was just like, hey, Ross, like you have to be who you are, like you have to be like, don't apologize for your age. Don't try to act like you're some 50-year-old seasoned Grizzly veteran. Like you can still have fun with them, hold them accountable, but don't try to be Coach Walker. Don't try to be Coach Foy, who I played for and worked for at Paris Junior College, who won a national championship at Paris Junior College. Don't try to be me. Don't try to be like Coach Bishop was my. He's like, you just have to be you. And so I think that's the starter for all really good coaches. I do think there's a level of authenticity to them. They're not trying to be someone else. They are who they are. They're comfortable who they are. And, however that comes across, like players and people respect that, like, hey, he is who he is, and then we talked about it earlier, just the ability to communicate clearly. We talked about that earlier. Like, can you communicate clearly exactly what you're expecting from everyone, from staff, GA, operations, your players? So there's not confusion. There's you use the word clarity. I like that, and I think clarity and lack of confusion comes from being able to communicate, communicate in big groups, communicate in small groups, communicate in one-on-one settings, just to eliminate, outside voices, man, because you mentioned it, man, there's so much noise surrounding these young athletes nowadays.
Yeah.
And if you're also clouding what you're trying to, if it gets cloudy, then it just allows the outside noises to elevate, and then the last one, and I think this is like Coach McCaslin, Coach Drew, you mentioned, obviously Coach Mack coming from that tree, and even prior to him, Coach Eustace, they have an ability to get a group of people to believe, and they can instill hope into very, very dire situations. And they have a belief that this will work out, and the belief permeates into everyone around them, but it's not through anything other than very, very a lot of commitment and a lot of hard work. They also, it's like, like the Bible, it's biblical, like faith without works is dead. So it's not like just some corny, like, oh, we're gonna, there's a work component that matches up to the belief, but ultimately they instill that level of belief into to programs and into people to get things. And then that's where, like, if you look at all those guys, Coach Eustace, Coach Mack, Coach Drew, who's part of that, who Coach Foy won a national championship at Pitt, like all the people that are kind of doing things at places that you would say can't happen there, it's because they have that level of belief and they instill it, and then they raise the expectations, and then the work rate meets the expectations and good things happen.
And my follow-up question was going to be, how do you create that in others? And you did kind of answer it next, and because you're right on the money. I mean, there's not a press conference or a parent meeting for high school coaches in the world where that first time head coach doesn't show up and say the right things. Like, nobody says, hey, listen, we're probably not going to be very good. And our culture here is going to suck. And we're probably going to play slow. Like that's the anti press conference right there.
Yes.
But so everybody says that, like, I believe we can do amazing things here. I mean, golly, 20 years ago, Coach Drew stood in front of us, and we had 6 scholarship players, and said, I came here to win championships. And me and those other 5 scholarship guys are like, well, not this year, not but he did have that belief in something in the future, saying it's one thing, and then you nailed it, backing it up with the work ethic and the right communication, or else players are going to see through that real quick, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's where I give, like you said, the anyone on that, Coach Drew, Coach Mack, Coach Eustace, even, like, they set the standard and they reveal the expectations. And then once you get people to believe, and sometimes you have to sift through that. It took us, we were the same way. We took over a North Texas program that was struggling a little bit. And that first team meeting was the same way. You go in there and you're telling those guys, no, we're going to win championships. And they did the same thing you did, dude. They're like rolling their eyes, like looking at each other, like, these dudes are crazy, but when you get, if you really believe that you can do, then the work doesn't seem pointless. And so that is the first part. You have to get them to actually believe, hey man, if we do this, if we put in this type of work, if we will commit ourselves to this, if we will come together, it will pay off. It will pay off. And it doesn't necessarily mean it pays off in championships all the time, because that's the reality too, man. And I think you have to talk about that as well. Talked about it the other day with some of our guys who they didn't, their team was getting their butt kicked that day in practice, and maybe you don't like how the response was. You have to remind them, dude, LeBron James has lost more finals than he has won, but he is not a loser.
Yeah.
Tom Brady has lost Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes has lost Super Bowls. Steph Curry's lost finals. You don't identify them as a loser, but they have lost. And that is part of this sport, unfortunately.
I think having that talk with them is powerful. We rarely talk about what's it going to be like when we lose. We almost talk, in same way with culture. We only talk about culture and wins and losses if it's all going to go right. But we know it's going to go wrong. We know those dark clouds are coming. So helping them to navigate, and hey, when this happens, this is how we're going to show up. This is how we handle it. Coach, I think that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I remember last year, one thing we showed our guys was Jalen Hurts' press conference after he lost the Super Bowl. And, the level of ownership that he displayed, the level of, leadership. And yeah, you didn't cut that clip off thinking like, oh man, that guy's like a loot, it was like, that dude's a freaking, it's why he is who he is. It's why he's in the position that he's in, because of the resolve component of it, man. So that is part of it, because as we know, everybody wants to be on the floor when confetti's falling, and everybody wants to be in the national championship picture, and everybody wants to be in the, but not everybody wants to be we were hurt, banged up, and sick last year, and we were getting beat by 50 at St. Mary's. Not everybody wants to be in that locker room.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be in the locker room that's celebrating the NIT championship. But what the challenge is can you stay together and can you be okay with those moments to get to the next moment, you know? And you kind of have to be able to do both. You do, you know? And like you said, it's kind of probably an under talked about part of sports, but that's the reality, man. That is the reality.
I wrote down that after believe, it really comes down to your confidence too.
Yes.
Because I mean, some people lie pretty well. That's true.
Yes.
That's true. But you can't lie to yourself. Like you look in the mirror, I mean, you know whether what you're saying to them is really true or not. And over time, cracks will start to really show. So the confidence that you have to have as a coach in yourself, your staff, the system, style of play, the culture, you're like you actually have to believe it yourself in order to get your team to ever get close to that level, right?
Yep. Yeah, man. I have such a, I mean, I think we all fight it, you know, but I have such a level of respect for, you know, and Coach Mack was that way, man. Like he didn't allow his mind to go any other place than this will work out. And I'm sure he had his moments. That's sure that's where his faith came in. I look at a guy like Deion Sanders, you know, who he is an entertainer, you know, that's part of his persona, but there is a level of belief there that's rooted in work, and he wasn't afraid to speak it into existence, you know, where some people kind of shell up and be like, I don't know. He's like, no, we're gonna win. We're gonna win at Colorado. We're gonna do, but it's he's not just saying that and then they don't go out there and work at a, you know, he was one of the hardest workers as a player. No one practiced harder than him.
Yeah.
And so he does have that. It matches the level of belief, but I mean, I'll be honest, you know. I mean, I know everybody else probably can say, "Oh, I knew they'd be good." Like, dude, I didn't think they were going to go to TCU and win in game one. I didn't, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
He did, and he got enough of his players to believe. And like he was honest about that. Like, probably even the whole locker room didn't believe, but now probably a little more do. You know, so there is something to not being, you know, and that doesn't mean that like with you guys, like Coach Drew saying that, well, they didn't, it took 10, 15 years before they, you know, won a national championship, won a Big 12 championship, or, you know, 4 or 5 years to get all the way to the Sweet
Coach,
16.
we were 8-21. The championship was not won that year. That's for sure.
Yeah. You know, but it didn't stop him from saying this is what we're going to do. And he worked every day with the belief and got all those guys to buy into that. This is going to pay off.
How important do you think it is, especially like in your place or with Deion Sanders, you know, since you brought him up, how important is winning early on to really secure that belief, build on it, have it truly take root in them? Because let's just flip it. Let's just say TCU goes in and blows them out.
Yeah.
And he's been saying all this stuff about what we're going to do, what we're going to do. I'm not saying he still can't get there, but that you and I both, that win's huge. And because they won the next week, you know, like how big is that early on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is there's certainly, you want, you know, reinforcements in that, hey man, like I told, you know, like if we do this, if we show up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we put the right work in and we prepare at the right level and we're doing the right things, that this will happen, you know, and it certainly just raises the level of belief, you know, and that's probably the biggest challenge as coaches is if you're not having that level of success early on, and how do you stay the course? And the first championship we won in 2020 here, we were 6-8 before we got to conference. We were 2-5 to start the year, but we played a very difficult schedule. Lost a close game at VCU, lost at Arkansas, lost to Rhode Island, lost to Utah State, lost to Oklahoma at the buzzer at home.
Oh, wow.
But even in the midst of that, just to be able to kind of like keep going, keep believing, keep working, keep getting better. It is a challenge, when it's not quickly happening, especially in a microwave society where everybody, especially these guys, boy, they do something a little bit and they want it paid off right then.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.